Star Citizen returns this month with another monthly report from January. First progress for Star Citizen this year. It's a short one, but there's some interesting stuff here. We're going to go over it, and we're going to talk about kind of what features and ships are coming up. As we do, we'll go over the features, and then we're going to cover the ships separately. First, we have an ice cave. I don't know. They don't actually tell us what this is. I don't know if this is an ice cave or if it's part of the rock cracker stations. There's a lot of guesses on it. Usually we don't have this much infrastructure inside the caves of Star Citizen. Usually if there's like a door and a lock and all this kind of stuff going on, that means it's something that's a little more bespoke and handmade. So we'll see where this is. But for now, that's what opens up the monthly report for them. Jumping into AI content though, after the winter break, AI content immediately began to close out the Alpha 4.6 patch. This included adding new Spectrum content for the Stanton system and working alongside the environment team to install screens around Levski for use by the People's Alliance. I hear they just got touchscreens for the first time, so they're really excited. As with any release, the team tackled various bugs affecting the social AI and mission providers. Elsewhere, the team walked through their general plan for the year and outlined the goals they would like to achieve alongside the supporting teams that would be needed to assist. The rest of the month was spent continuing tasks for initiatives started in the previous year. As we've talked about, January is usually a month of planning for them. Oftentimes, this takes up the whole team, and it leads to them not having anything really to tell us for the month of February or January. Go back to the February monthly report, and you can see from the not the monthly report, the roadmap roundup. There we go. And you can see here that it is loaded with details. Tons and tons and tons and tons of things being added in. That is because they usually spend that first month of the year doing a lot of testing or planning and talking. But generally that first month of January is all planning. We don't really get many details. They come out with this at the end of February, and we finally kind of start the year. As I have covered, this year has started much more quickly than they normally do. So as you can see, even while AI, has been working on stuff over the course of the year, they've still been getting stuff into the game even early on. It's a different kind of year. Moving on to the AI features team, AI features and tech began the year fixing a blocker that caused NPCs to incorrectly break out of combat and investigate. This led to human combatants not firing across various missions in Stanton, Pyro, and Nyx. Another issue was fixed that caused NPCs to be stuck in the cowering position. Yeah, this one's been awful, dude. This is like the new T-pose. The team then improved firing validation and then reworked the way NPC trigger switch logic is used to give the devs more control over its utilization. For example, NPCs using burst fire capable weapons will always switch to burst fire if desired. Improvements were also made to aim direction handling, when targets are no longer visible to eliminate NPCs occasionally aiming through walls. These are all very recognizable bugs, right? Like, these are the ones that we know quite well. Continuing on, this stuff gets pretty interesting here. For creatures, updates were made to the adult Valakar, which will no longer try to close in on targets. It's going to be a little more strategic. The Apex Valakar, which is no longer able to hear while traversing underground. The burrow to position behavior was also updated to string instead of a fixed type. This will directly pass animation fragment tags, improving iteration time. The team also ensured that the Apex Valakar can freely move around planetary nav mesh. That's huge, dude. This is freaking huge. Okay? I still remember, I'm sure we've got footage for it. We could probably go back and look up the nav mesh when they first started working on it. And they were just placing down navigation blocks across planets. This is 3-4 years ago. Context. When we were seeing this episode of Inside Star Citizen right here, it was impossible to find an AI on a planet. It was either they were on a space station, they were in a spaceship, or they were in a bunker underground. There were no NPCs around the bunkers on the outside. There were no NPCs in these distribution centers. To be quite honest, there's still not that many NPCs outside or traversing the planet, which is why I feel this is a big deal, because we've yet to really see NPCs traversing outside of space cows, really, and birdies. So bigger and larger things are nice. Hopefully this means that the Valakar will soon be free roaming around the planets it's on. which could mean random sandworm encounters. I don't even know what the Ashalahid or whatever the heck you guys say about Dune. Shalahib, whatever the heck they call the sandworm. Maybe you can do it soon. They say the algorithm has improved to allow large creatures to find paths and travel large distances as they are not always close to players. They gonna be living their own lives, bro. Going out and doing their thing, hitting the club, getting a party, walking at the park. I'm happy for these sandworms. Get up, get out, do your own thing. I'll show you what they look like though. Because we originally got introduced to this sandworm on Star Citizen's CitizenCon in 2024. With the expectation that was where beast hunting was going, but they have not been able to fully embrace what they showed us here. Give you a little looky-loo here.
Well, now our crew is assembled, and in a universe as big as Star Citizen, who knows what trouble they could run into.
Shai Hulud.
So let's find out what they're going to face. Now, they're heading to the planet Monarchs, which is in the Pyro system. So without further ado.
So this is the idea for, like, this is an actual profession in the game. I'll go one step further here. I love showing the proof, okay? It's good to have the proof just so that you can keep it in your mind and remember it in the future when, like, somebody else is asking you the question. You go back here and you see that we do indeed have the Science Academy asking us to capture animals, collect animal parts, and hunt animals. So the idea of hunting beasts in Star Citizen will absolutely be a big thing. And they've actually shown us the beasts that will be available to be hunted. Before we get to the sandworm, I'm sorry. Let me show you kind of the overall scope of this. Because it's not just like, oh, you're just going to kill something random and get some crafting materials for it. This is going to be like a full-fledged profession, I think.
So far, have typically just had alterations to their loot and appearance. However, we want to go further with what variants can be. For example, what if the Valakar evolved and grew in a swamp environment instead of a desert planet? Or if a Valakar never made it to the surface and only lived in drowned caves? These are the kind of questions that make sci-fi
that was the Yormandi.
One of the best mediums. And I can hear the questions already. What does an adult cave Valakar look like? What does an apex quasi-grazer look like? Well, it's these questions that get everyone excited that works on creatures to give you a glimpse
an apex cow.
All of these variances and differences and new creatures make up the unique elements of various planets, ensuring that
I think this is the biggest creature in the game. I think they are actually going to try and do this sky squid thing.
They're populated with appropriate creatures. We've been designing creatures in mind so that planet ecosystems influence their behaviors, designs, aesthetics, and harvestables. With that being said,
I got to get a blood knife. No, that's not. What is it called? The Kursk knife? The Krisk knife? Some kind of knife with a K sound?
Fauna Matrix. That's all from me. I'm very happy to be bringing the Valakar to all of our backers. It's really like nothing else you've played before. I'll leave you with this last video. Enjoy the rest of CitizenCon, everybody.
So this is really a show kind of all the little animal boys that they want to be involved. So we got that one. They're just showing us the ones we have. These are the first 4. And then they'll expand from here. And we do not have these things. That looks fucking scary. I don't like that. They say all of these will be in the game by 1.0. So yeah. That being said, here is the actual hunting scenario that they were trying to lay out for the Apex Valakar. Dude, they need to actually pull this off. I wasn't really all that excited for this when it first showed. I mean, the idea behind it is cool. I'm just not much of a monster hunter, beast hunter kind of person. The Witcher 3 is an amazing game to me, but my least favorite part is the beast hunting, not gonna lie. But I do understand that's really exciting for people, so I'm not saying it's a bad thing. But I'm so much more excited just to see this play out because over the last year, seeing how the game has evolved with the content, it's really impressive. It's actually kind of catches me to realize that like the game isn't that far away from giving experiences that are legitimately unreplicable in other games. Not that they're just not doing, literally the other games just cannot do it. Some games can, but most don't try. And I feel like they're getting so close to this stuff, but I'm wondering what's holding this up. Obviously, they're still working at it, which is good. But it's taken a little longer than they thought. Not crazy for CIG. This last event has been the most playable event in your opinion? The one going on right now? So the thing is, if this came into the game, it wouldn't be an event. This would be like, I mean, this would be kind of like the Lazarus Apex Valacar. There would still be a way to find these. They would just be sitting out there in the world somewhere, I bet. It's literally, it's like Mass Effect. They give you all these places to land on the planet, but ultimately you wouldn't really have that much fun till you came across an outpost or one of those worms that popped up in a valley. We got our valley worm. I'm such a valley worm. Like, totally. Ouch, dude. It's in the game already, this is just the normal version. Yeah, I mean, it's not like this though, right? Like, the snake doesn't go underground, it doesn't like move that much, it kind of just stays in that one little tiny area. It feels like what we have in game right now is like a boss fight at the end of an FPS dungeon as opposed to an actual monster hunting ritual with vehicles and stuff. This feels like a different kind of engagement to me that they just weren't able to program, so they just brought the Valacar in to sit at the end of the Lazarus facilities. Maybe we all drink soy milk in the future? I'm allergic, bro. Oof! Bro, it's fun to watch devs explode. We're getting there. I think we'll be here. I think this is like exactly what we're seeing here in the monthly report is they weren't able to ship the Valacar how they wanted. They haven't really acknowledged that too much, but they are clearly working on getting it to the level that they have shown us in the past. Continuing on, they said that support for Star Paws is also planned for development in the near future. This is to create all those little beasties we just looked at. The team then refactored serialized debug variables to no longer propagate on release builds for the PU. NPCs are now also able to play different jump animations based on the ledge height that they're traversing. Different jump animations. I've been working on my jump animation. Do you guys want to see my different jump animations? They've been pretty good. I think I'm actually making more progress. And check this out. Look at this. Look at this. I've been practicing. Watch. Check it. Watch. Here's jump animation 1. Ha! Okay, okay. Here's jump animation 2. Ha! Yeah. So, like, we're all making progress, okay? They said the team can restrict the jump height of individual NPCs without having to change the navigation link. For example, in a situation where a navigation link of 4 meters high is used, only NPCs capable of jumping this height will use it. How? Do they mean pull yourself up? I haven't worked on a 4 meter high jumping in. I'm not going to show you guys that one. 4 meters? I'm guessing they mean like a 4 meter high wall that you can climb up, because that's insane. Finally, the team are now in the process of merging the 3D voxel grid Pathfinder into the PU. All right, cool. Animation sign. The facial animation team worked through the remaining motion capture content that was recorded toward the end of last year. As part of this, another new voice pack will be released in Alpha 4.7, as well as additional content for James Harryman, who will be returning with a new design. But somewhat familiar, I do wonder how much it'll look like Jared. Art on the character side of things. The character art team began the year finalizing new gang outfits and progressing with combat armors for the coming year. Honestly, this is like character art team has been working constantly on gangs and armors, but they've been coming into the game, which is good. What is Star Paws? Oh god, it's just CIG's naming convention. We can go back to the November monthly report. I believe they introduced Star Paws there. Basically, it's just their engine for creating animals. They like to give weird names to this stuff. They said the creature pipeline is known as Star Paws. Work is being done on AI triggered actor state, radio formations reported from Squadron, and the AI skill extender was refactored and renamed AI Motive. So yeah, it's literally just their creature development pipeline. I remember when they hired a dev for this at the end of, I think it was 2023, if I'm not mistaken. Would have been easy to find. I made a video about it. This was a pretty advanced job. Holy shit! Are you kidding me? What the bro? This is the page. The video opened to the page that I was gonna reference. That is freaking wild. This is the posting that they made back in the end of 2023. They were looking for an AI designer, basically just to create believable social and combat AI behaviors, work with animators to create realistic and engaging behaviors for humans, aliens, and creatures. This was the person who was creating the entirety of the AI you could encounter. AI design team is responsible for ensuring the world of Star Citizen is full of life, from the tiniest creatures to the apex predators, from the human populations and outpost cities and space stations to the strange aliens on distant worlds. They are responsible for creating the AI behaviors for all those and the interactable entities that these NPCs and creatures use in the world. That's who these people are. And they started their work on this stuff in earnest towards the beginning of 2024, which makes sense because we started to see our first fauna in the game, I think mid 2024, right? It was like a May, I think 3.23 would have been the following update after that. So many updates. Yeah, so May of 2024, they dropped in the first two, the Copion and the Morak. And then in the following update, I believe we got the no, that was last year. No, after that, we got the Space Cow, yeah, the Kazi Grazer later on in the year. And then after that, we got the Valakar, and then the Big Valakar, and then the Yormandi. So I'm betting we're going to see a new, like, it's been a little while since we've seen a new fauna. I bet we see something fairly soon, first half of this year. But they've clearly started to kick this stuff off since they got that team together, and now they're getting the actual pipeline for the team. This is kind of like what happened with planets. It also happened with ships. You can see like the individuals that they recruit and get together to build the team. And then you can see the team starting to like produce stuff. And then eventually you see the company start talking about the actual tool that's being built for the team to keep producing the stuff that they already made faster. This happened with missions too. We got like 1 or 2 new missions a few years ago. This was when we were seeing the talk about, like, Inside Star Citizen was covering modular mission sets. They had Elliot on a lot. They were talking about salvage missions. But it still took a little while. Now we're seeing new missions come in like every patch, every couple patches, every 3 patches. So like they clearly have this method of starting something, doing it, getting out some proof of concept, building the tools, getting in the systems and programs in place, and then the content actually starts to come from that team more consistently. I think anybody who's worked on a project before can see that that's a pretty normal way for things to work. It's just taken them a long time to get there. Continuing on the team, they say the team has then refactored serialized debug variables to no longer propagate on release builds for the PU. NPCs are now also able to play different jump animations. We already went over that. We're way ahead of that. We're going to skip on the ships. Like I said, we'll come back to that when we have our spreadsheet ready. Moving on to the fucking lack of core gameplay this month. A sad day, but unfortunately, no core gameplay development in January. Now, like I said, it does tend to be a testing month for them, and the core gameplay generally comes back here. Actually, going back to February of last year's monthly report, you can see that they did indeed have a massive, absolutely massive core game. Dude, bro. It's huge. So I don't know if they'll do the same next year, but they clearly held back information, and then they gave us the whole update about what's going on with core gameplay. So it's very likely that there was core gameplay development in January, and they just didn't put it on the monthly report for whatever reason. So we'll move on to mission design. Coming back from the holidays, the mission team continued with their work for content coming this year. This began with the Industrial Collection missions. Great addition, though we still don't quite have them in game. Which will also add reputation to mining-based factions and expand on salvage gameplay. We've covered the mining stuff for a while. We've been waiting for mining missions for like 2.5 years, so it's great that they're finally getting in. For mining, these missions will complement existing gameplay. For example, while a mission may ask for a specific amount of iron, mining could produce more than required, which can then be stored for use later, used for another mission, or sold for profit elsewhere. GII folks, keep an eye out. I am working on a system right now. I will start buying these materials from you. If you are running missions and you have too much, depending on the quality you have, once that does become a thing, I am slowly working towards getting a division in this org together so that we can buy stuff from you and store it ourselves for goods later. I'm very, very into trade, so keep an eye out for if you are a miner and you like to supply stuff. We got a place for you. The salvage missions task players with retrieving components, weapons, CM, and RM, which can be twinned with the salvage rights players can already buy, allowing for profit maximization. The team also supported the Clearing the Air event, providing varied mission types that allow players to work for a chosen company, or for all of them, as we know you guys like to, and earn rewards. This has been what seems to be a pretty big success with folks. Now, it seems to be a big success in terms of the vibes, and a lot of people are saying that has made the gameplay better, but I do wonder if every event is like this. Will the novelty wear off? I do think they did a good job, and they need to encourage people to work together. But I am wondering if it went exactly how they wanted it to go. All right, let's continue. Looking forward, design work was completed on the revival of Siege of Orison. This was followed by a phase of rapid iteration to ensure the first instanced content is a great step forward. Anybody in chat not get to do Siege of Orison? Anybody came after Siege of Orison happens? If we could do a quick blow through of what it is. It is a very fun event. I think for people who come from gameplay like myself, which is, the classics, Halo, Mass Effect, Deus Ex, the same freaking 3 or 4 videos I named, or games I name every time. If you're coming from games like that, I think Siege of Orison is a very, very fun event because it's very focused on urban, group-based FPS gameplay.
Hey, happy birthday! Oh my god! We're under attack. Security's been overrun. Please, help us.
Dude, can you imagine being vacationing out at a freaking resort in Maui and this gang just comes in with military equipment and kills everyone and takes over? Stanton is a terrible place to vacation.
Attacks these commercial platforms. Gather any gear you need and help us take them back.
So this is the idea. The Ninetales gang takes over a couple of platforms in Crusader, and you go to Crusader, you take one of those ferries. But yeah, it's essentially a FPS firefight with a whole bunch of Ninetales members, but you're specifically looking for lieutenants. So you have to fight your way through streets, through a couple buildings, get up to a landing pad, kill the specific lieutenant, take out the anti-air defenses. It's an objective-based FPS mission. Yes, it's combat, but it's very, very squad focused. It's very focused on getting together with a group and working together, which is why it makes sense that they're instancing it. They want this to be a closed off premiere showcase of what Star Citizen can actually do for gameplay. I think they're starting to try and show the game off more than just add these features, you know? You can't fly there with a Hercules. Even though they show the Hercules here. So they are showing ships here. I guess technically you could fly in with the Hercules, but you have to disable the anti-air defenses first. And at that point, you would have people on the ground, so I don't know if it would be good to drop a bomb. But for the most part, you're not flying your own ships in there. And so this is going to be the first thing in the game that they instance. And they actually explained kind of why they wanted to do that back when it first came out. So I'll give them the chance to explain it themselves.
Find out what one of our first instances will be. Siege of Arzen was an event we did previously, which created a gameplay scenario where the player had to run through and progress through contested islands of Arzen. This was a high-paced, high-intensity event, but it struggled.
I hope they expanded this. While it was kind of cool when they first did it, one of my biggest problems was that it didn't feel like this at all. What they're showing us here is so far outside of what Siege of Arzen felt like.
Event we did previously,
like this looks like all-out war. Bombs going off, ships flying around fighting.
Gameplay scenario with.
But when you actually go to the event, in classic Star Citizen fashion, you'll like land out here on the ground and there won't be anyone there. Then you walk over to the entrance of the building and there's like 2 guys glitched out in the back and 1 person stuck halfway through an elevator door. Obviously, those things have been fixed in some places since we last ran this event. But I want to see NPCs out in the ground. I want to see them shooting us as we're landing and like challenging us outside, you know? And it's got to be more than just 15 NPCs scattered throughout a building. Let's get some real gameplay from this, especially since they're instancing it. They need to go all out with this and make it a proper finished game style mission, to be honest.
Player had to.
But since it's their first time instancing, I'm sure there's going to be some tech problems.
Run through and progress through contested islands of Arzen. This was a high-paced, high-intensity event, but it struggled a little bit from its technical execution. But now with the introduction of instancing, it gives us an opportunity to evolve it and modify it and make it better for you in a small group to work through that activity.
It is an event that I had the honor of pretty much solely designing and building all of the logic and having the stress of trying to get it working.
Agent Dooley from the CDF puts the call out for volunteers because basically the Nine Tails have taken over sort of a cluster of floating platforms in Orison.
And you are there to kill these sort of lieutenants of this terrorist organization and take back control. So in our current thinking, Siege of Orison is designed for about a 15 to 20 people fire team. So you, your friends, or your org will go in, you'll all have sort of dedicated roles. Some of you might be the tank who brings in the heavy weapons and sort of pulls the fire. Some of you might sit at the back and be the sniper and pick people off who are a bit further to make the advance easier. Some of you will be the medic who sole job is going to be revive and look after the rest of your team and the health of them. And some of you will be the people
Love some jobs. Love jobs and roles. This is enough, though. You guys get the idea of Siege of Orison. So these are 2 big pieces of content that very well might show up this year that haven't been exclusive. Like, I don't think they were listed on the plans that they had last year. Let's see if there's the patch that tells us about that. There was like a page that they did. I don't remember what it's called, but they showed us all the stuff that's coming into Levski. Traveler's Guide to Nyx. That's what we're looking for. So here they mentioned everything that's coming in this year in Star Citizen. Levski, the Glacium Ring, mining, the asteroid belt, all that stuff. Yeah, that's in. Levski is here with the settlement. Yada, yada, yada. People's Alliance is here. Cool. We know them. Couple of new drinks. Okay, great. Beyond 4.4, though, they named out the other things that would be coming this year. The breaker stations, which we have confirmed for 4.7, coming next month. The municipal works, which were perceived to be one of, if not the first instance locations in Star Citizen, probably coming over this summer. And tactical strike groups. requiring a whole bunch of improvement to this game before these run reliably this year. I think this is kind of our end of year sort of Q4 thing, because it's probably requiring a lot of social tools additions. It also needs repair and rearm from capital ships. It needs more AI. It needs Vandal capital ships. It needs a lot. Planets, probably also midway through the year with Nyx 1 coming in, introducing Genesis. So this is what they told us is coming next year, right? At least in Levski. Now, we also got to hear in the CitizenCon, and Jared confirmed this at Star Citizen Live last week. Everything that we saw at CitizenCon is still planned for 2026. All of the space stations, all the planet tech, all of the ships, which I think we've seen the ships already. The features like crafting, obviously the instancing we just saw. All of this stuff is planned to come in, right? So one of those things is Siege of Orison, as we saw. And that, plus the Sandworm being something that's probably coming in, plus Squadron 42 is the game that's releasing, plus the crafting that they're working on, plus I honestly, Starware is probably not really that much of a focus for them, but plus like the social tools that they're doing, the inventory things, like there's so much stuff planned for this year. It's kind of crazy. All of the things that they talk about this year could not come this year, right? It takes a modicum of confidence to say they're actually going to get tactical strike groups in here. But at least from what they're saying, there's a lot of stuff planned for this year. We'll see how much of it actually lands. Okay, continuing on here, past Siege of Orison, they've also gotten some additional missions underway in Nyx, including the return of the courier and delivery missions as part of the ladder towards hauling. Yeah, that's good. These are important because I think we need to get more missions that are high quality, low quantity. Show people that like you can still haul cargo. You don't have to get 80 boxes of stuff. Narrative. After the holidays, Narrative hit the ground running, supporting the final closeout for Alpha 4.6. This included writing the usual array of missions, objectives, mission, objective, item, and vehicle descriptions, as well as dealing with any bugs that arose during testing. Most of the work revolved around upcoming missions, events, and characters that will require further narrative input throughout the year. Team also started outlining their first performance capture shoot for the new year, so scripts were written and reviewed with the design to ensure the correct content is captured. Narrative and tech design discussed the location scattering tool detailed in the CitizenCon 2954 presentation, helping them understand how to theme these generated settlements in a way that feels scalable but specific. This is our first mention of Starchitect in a monthly report. I can confirm it was being worked on last year. I won't confirm how, but this is the first time they've, I think, told us publicly that they are in the midst of working on it. And while it's just narrative, I do think narrative is generally brought in after some design work has been done, because otherwise, what are they narrating? Let me give you guys a looky look at what Starchitect is, though, because this is some pretty crazy technology. This is their explanation for how do we deal with all of these planets being empty. Obviously, it's not just locations, though. It's also AI. So, like, we're going to be walking and going through this whole presentation, and as we do, I'm sure some folks are going to be very tempted to be like, okay, that's cool, love locations, that's great, but what's going to be in it? What about the content inside of it? What are you guys going to put in it? What about all these empty planets with locations, but what about what's going to be in it? How about the stuff that's inside of it? What are you going to put in it? We're going to see all forms of that. You can watch the rest of this presentation if you would like to learn more about that. This is the life part of the presentation, talking about AI and how it changes. Obviously, you guys have also seen that they're trying to add missions, salvage and mining missions and VIP missions to wrecked derelicts and these other locations. So like, I'm just pre-warning you there.
We can to make sure our planets are physically based and realistic, and our biomes are emergent. But it's time to start populating the verse, because where there's people, there are their lives and the structures they build. So it makes sense that whenever you go and explore these planets, that you find their lives. And what's even more important is that when we make these structures, that they use and they follow the same rules as our biomes, such as the jungles and the swamps. But before we continue, let's first take stock as to where we are now. At the moment in the verse, we have these custom beautifully made locations, such as Ghost Hollow, we've got our distribution centers, or even just some outposts. And these have all been handcrafted by our designers and artists to hit that benchmark. And they've been working directly on the planet. However, going forward, this doesn't really scale with how we want to go forward with the game. Server meshing is about to arrive, and we're going to have a way higher player count. So those 73 bunkers across Stanton just won't cut it. But in general, it's also pretty barren. There's not much for you to explore and find stuff out there. So there's no exploration.
To be honest, we
gameplay.
saw this. Because they couldn't do instancing last year, when they added the Onyx facilities, for those who don't know, there's only supposed to be one Onyx facility. That's why, like, whenever it gets referenced, they say the Onyx facility. There's not supposed to be 98 Onyx facilities with 98 different Dr. Yorits flying around doing 98 terrible experiments. Or maybe it's one Dr. Yorit flying around doing 98 terrible experiments. He gets around. I don't know. But, like, they showed this last year that a small amount of locations leads to a lot of player friction. But as soon as they create a bunch of locations, suddenly everyone's running the same kind of missions at different places and not seeing each other. So this isn't a crazy idea.
You haven't really put your character to use for the way that you should. So this means we need to go bigger, which means we need to change our workflow. And with any workflow means we need to first establish a new benchmark. So with our new benchmark, we are ensuring quality and improve on our previous work and make it even better. And any location that you'll find needs to have its own unique personality and no repetition. We don't want you to find the same location twice. This also means that this is your exploration and your findings. So when
He said it. It fit lore for there to be multiple of him running around. You're not wrong. That Yorit, man.
you go out there and explore with your Carrack or with your Corsair, is that whatever you find, you can share with your orgs or with your friends. As for density, if you fly down to the planet, we want you to find something, let's say, every 100 clicks. But also improve the mission experience. So when you stay more on the planet, you're more immersed and you go from location to location. Just keep going. So going forward, we are modularizing all our existing locations and assets. And we're basically making a library of buildings and layouts that we'll be using to no longer work directly on the planet. The neat thing, all these modules and assets can be iterated upon and tested right in the editor for all the designers and artists to ensure fun gameplay and interactive sandbox activity, and also make sure all the mission stuff is there. Basically, we're building a toolkit. So let's look at some of the things that we need to keep in mind as we are making that toolkit. First and foremost, we've got our art style and branding. We've got things like Frontier for our settlements. We've got high-tech for the immersion.
Okay, I gotta step in here. This is actually a really important reference we need to get to. There's a couple important references that he's making here. So first is, if we go back to CitizenCon 2023, we can actually see them already starting this initiative of expanding out their libraries to prepare for this. Going all the way back to, I think it's Living on the Edge. Your boy was talking about the frontier style archetype. So they were talking about all these kind of like location archetypes and stuff back here, if you remember that. Isn't there? It's sharing like social spaces will look different. We'll have mining outposts. You'll have stuff that's meant for refining, all that jazz, right?
To match those categories together to provide that variation.
All of this is kind of the same thing at a smaller scale.
The archetype, and they provide that core gameplay hook and define the main function of a settlement.
So if we go back here, one of the key things he mentions is that these are going to be locations based around keeping players engrossed for longer than just one single contract.
But that's me. Using this expanded library, we've been able to increase the individual location size because there's less of that obvious repetition between buildings within any single location. And we can't really call some of these large locations outposts anymore. They become something more like settlements and imply a larger and more established community. Now, as a player, it will mean a lot more to explore and do at any single individual location with a localized and personal feeling mission types that might see you moving around a single settlement to complete objectives or doing short hop missions between clusters of settlements on a single planet.
So we've seen this starting, right? The maintenance missions get applied locally when you get to places. Wicklow is the first testing case where they want to bring in people to actually get a mission physically in a location and then go out and do it. They're going to start doing that at more of these kinds of outposts as well. Maintenance was the first one we saw last year, but deliveries are not far behind. I think combat's probably going to be another one. Things like mining and possibly salvage. I don't know. Like if there's a salvage yard here, why would they not give you little contracts to salvage wrecked ships that they brought by, right? All of this is, I think, pointing in the same direction of wanting to make sure that players are not traveling long distances between planets for all their stuff, but rather feel they can hang out in one planet and just milk that faction, you know, run through the content that's there. Make most use of what's actually happening in their local place so they could spend less time traveling, more time playing, and the game itself feels more like a series of neighborhoods, like a series of different environments where you get actual different experiences rather than the whole game being a place you're just supposed to fly around all in one day. Here is a little bit of the expansion in that that asset library that they're using to build up Pyro and Nyx.
On our library of content to the point where we could make smaller locations like this one, but with a limited amount of variety between each one. And this is what that library of modules looked like at that point. We'd established our main building modules as well as some of our larger buildings and a number of smaller secondary and dressing and standalone modules. But each outpost couldn't be too large without there being some obvious repetition between the modules used. So let's have a look at that library today.
And we've been over this. It still gets repetitive. I do think, though, that part of the reason it gets repetitive is because no locations have their own unique personality still. They all still feel like they don't have a real use in the game because they're not actually doing anything. So I'm very hopeful that this year, both the narrative and this Starchitect tool can start to stick their hands into these locations and make them feel actually like they're there for a reason. Doesn't matter if you have 5 locations or 40 locations. If none of them have a name you can remember for any specific need, then might as well have one. The last thing I want to show you guys in regards to this is I want to say it's micro technicalities panel they did. I don't know how to spell that. There we go. So this is where they talk about
recent to
archetypes at an even larger scale. So we went from a single settlement up to this idea of Starchitect and how it would define planets and their styles. And now this is where they ultimately had laid out the full style set for Star Citizen and all the buildings that were going to come from it. So this ultimately is where Starchitect is going to get its guidelines, I think.
And learning lessons from Lowville and Area 18. Okay. So for the new art style, as I said, if you look at Lowville, we wanted something that felt old, not necessarily well maintained. And Area 18, it was a bit more of a dystopian kind of like neon city. So we already knew right at the beginning that New Bab would need something new. And also, like I said, for the narrative, it was.
And we know Microtech. Let's jump forward. This shows us really everything that they're going to go. And just for a quick recap, because we've been over this a lot: utilitarian, colonialism, and high tech. We already see those. This is Pyro and Nyx. This is Arcorp and Hurston. This is Orison and New Babbage. We're also going to see Henoism coming in with Castra, and we'll probably get some super modernism in Terra. I do not know. Streamline also is supposed to be relevant in Terra, actually. You can look at the Terra concept art images, and I think one of those images they had there for Streamline is straight out of Terra. Like this. Or no, this one. Yeah, this is like, if you look at what they say for the Streamline, they say retro rounded corners, and then they show like these like kind of half dome buildings, and then you look at this and it's the exact same thing. So I do think Terra is going to have some Streamline, super modern, probably some utilitarian. The only thing I really don't know where it's going to come from would be meta classicism. I don't know where we'll run into this. Maybe Terra will have some of that. Who knows? Either way, this is the whole understanding of their idea behind locations. It's not just plop a location, do all this. There's supposed to be context to them, and they're supposed to make sense. And all of those rules are being written into this Starchitect program. So I think that's what they've been spending a lot of their time working on. It's just defining what actually drives all this stuff. Now maybe they got to build the art and like make the system that actually plants this stuff. I'm sure this is still a far way away, but I'm glad to see it being worked on. Let's hear more about where they're headed with it. Here, I believe.
That toolkit. First and foremost, we've got our art style and branding. We've got things like Frontier for our settlements. We've got high-tech for the emergency shelters, but also utilitarian, like our bunkers and distribution centers. The richer the data, the richer these locations will be. Secondly, they all have a function. We've got mining for our mining outposts, farming for the farmsteads, or just places where people live. The function of the place will define the way the place looks as well, and its form. And last but not least, the people as well, the faction and their loadouts. We've got lawful people, like the new Citizens for Prosperity in Pyro, unlawful, such as Xenofred, and sometimes not even no one. And the place needs to look a bit, derelict.
Unoccupied clothing.
You'll find different people.
Is that just nude?
So, now that we've made our toolkit, and we've defined all this new stuff, let's start building thousands of locations. Yes, I said thousands.
Yeah. See, this is the part where you're like...
So, to avoid the same issue of working on directly in the planet, I'd like to introduce to you Starchitect.
So, like, Star Paws, you see where they're going there.
What Starchitect allows us to do is directly on a planetary scale scatter all these new libraries and modules and assets and no longer work directly on the planet. And it uses the same logical rule set as our emergent biomes. And it also gives us full control over the data that we set on these locations. So expect locations in places where they make sense. Let's kind of look at all this new Genesis data and all these new libraries and chuck it into Starchitect and see what it gives us.
All right, I'm going to skip ahead here a little bit. So like I was saying, archetypes, building styles, functions, needs. Think about the fact that when you are cargo hauling commodities, you're not going to go to a security outpost. You're going to look for a mining outpost, right? That context should apply for every job you're doing, from looking for a bounty. Where is that bounty? Where should they be hanging out? Should they be hanging out at a backwater bar down on a planet in Pyro, or should they be hanging out at a aid facility in Magda? Like, they need to make sure that they hit the rules. So here are some examples that I think he gives to show how these locations might be formed. Or it's just YouTube loading. Maybe.
Specify what this resource needs to be. But we can also give suggestions where sometimes you'd find it here and sometimes you wouldn't. If the location has refineries, it might want to be near water to refine the resources. Then secondly, we can define what buildings should be there. So obviously we need mining buildings, houses for people to live as well, and even power buildings that we can leverage with the resource network. Starchitect will intelligently figure out where the place is and what needs to be at the location.
In my opinion, if their planet tech can work how they're saying, right? If we get Nix 1 and we go around it and explore it, and the seeds and the plants and the rocks and all that stuff spawns believably how they explained it would, I don't see why this can't happen.
Next up, farms. Its rules, well, temperature. Not every plant can live in every temperature, but the same with soil type. Only certain plants can be in certain grounds. And then we can query the seed map to determine what plants you would find there. What are the harvestables? As for the targets, again, farm buildings, obviously, power buildings, houses, but even animals, such as our beloved quasi-grazers. And last but not least, derelict ships. We've got these all over the place currently. Rules, well, they'd be close to an anti-air because I would be shot down. But even in harsh flight conditions, such as mountains or low visibility, you'd probably most commonly find them.
That is such a great excuse for exploration. Derelict ships in places where you can't fly because the anti-air is too powerful, so you have to find ways to get in on the ground. It's like the excuses write themselves, dude.
Targets, well, crash ship parts, of course. Sometimes you'd find the full remains of a javelin, and the other time you might just find the nose of a starfarer laying around. So, let's talk about coherency. Sure, we can scatter all these locations everywhere on the planet, and you'll find them in places they make sense, but we can do better. You don't just want to find an outpost completely on its own, right? We want to make sure it really feels like people have built their lives here. So, let's talk about some missing bits. We want to tell tighter stories, such as the people's lives, but also logical exploration. If I find one thing, I expect to find something similar or something else nearby. We also need more data control. What defines one mining outpost being different from the other ones, aside from the harvestables? And also give the narrative developments. Make sure people build near rivers, on mountains. They build near town halls. They build near distribution centers. So to hit that bit of our benchmark, we make sure that locations are near each other and group them together. The effect it gives is a fully developed landscape with vistas and points of interest all over. And we group them together in what we like to call a cluster, like this one, that has 13 locations.
So you get where this is going. Jump forward a little bit more, and they're clustering things together.
Because they want to be isolated and do their evil deeds on their own. And also on an unlawful planet, such as somewhere in the Pyros system. For the targets, outlaw outposts, crash ships because they would shoot them down, and also ruins from just places they just completely overrun. The data on this one, you'd find specific loadouts, and they'll be using weapons that you wouldn't find in any other legal system. And these weapons will be sold at the shops in these regions. So,
yeah, who knows? Maybe we'll have roads in between these places, huh? Where we're going, we do need roads.
Just like our locations, we can put clusters near other clusters, and we group them together, ranging between 10 to 15 locations each. And we group this into what we call a sector. Like this one, that has about 120 locations.
However, I hope they can
planetary scale, we can define
I hope they can prove this out, and it can be a good system. They talk a lot of amazing game, and they show a lot of amazing tech. And I think if a company like Rockstar were to come out and show a presentation like this, people would lose their absolute f***ing minds for weeks. I think CIG just needs to deliver. They need to have they have delivered on some really key things, and they get props for, well, they probably don't get the props that they should for that kind of stuff. I think server meshing has done really good job for the game, but a lot of these deliveries, a lot of these things that they've talked about were right at the time where they need to start proving themselves. And I hope that Starchitect comes out and does what they say, because this is crazy technology. But I think most people need to see it to believe it. So that's Starchitect. And just to give context of where they are in terms of getting the narrative and tech designer talking about it. So it's probably starting to scale after getting some initial work last year. Still a ways away, I bet. They talk as if it is coming with Genesis this year, but I don't know, man. I don't know. We'll see. Let's keep an eye on the February monthly report for that kind of thing. Online technology, the network team began the year changing the DGS manager class so that it's aware of DGSs that no longer have groups streamed in. Guessing that's for dynamic server meshing? This provides buffer time between the DGS having its last group streamed out before it can be considered for release back to fleet. The team also created a class that will change as they transition from static meshing and instancing to quasi-dynamic and then full dynamic server meshing. Besides this, the team tested various in-development technologies along with maintaining and improving tasks. The Live Tools team continued surveying users of Bootstrap, the local game environment tool, to make it more stable, faster, and easier to use for testing and development work. Development of the ticket assignment workflow web app tool continued with delivery targeted for the end of February. Finally, the validated UI design for Hex is currently being implemented with modern navigation and improved layout to enhance workflow efficiency. Finally, sorry that was loud, in R&D, after the optimization push at the end of 2025, Ordinary, where the heck did I get Ordinary? January saw the revival of the new and improved ground prototype, with work beginning to make it production ready for both the PU and Squadron 42. Once complete, ground details will be cheaper to evaluate and render, ground fog modeling will be improved, and lighting will self-shadow and cast shadows like rain volumes and clouds. Part of this work also includes various optimizations for the atmosphere ray marcher. Okay, so ground rendering optimization is great. Stuff coming from Squadron 42. We are now going to turn towards ships and talk about what's coming up there. But I hope you got a good information chunk out of this read through. Learned something about the Valakar, maybe a little bit of narrative stuff. Mainly Starchitect, I think, is the most exciting revelation in this one. But it's January. It wasn't that exciting. I'll see you in February for something a little bit more exciting, hopefully.